off like CP3. Shawty, she calling me MBB. I be on time, it's something you ain't never seen before. They call me the Dama, really want my whole team to score. Damn, yeah, too icy, yeah, too clean, yeah, my zone, yeah, 2-3, yeah, got shooters that hit from deep, bust like Giannis, yeah, too mean. Bright lights like we at the garden, on P, don't get me started. Whole team walk, give me the party. If I can't make the play, I'ma lob it. If you jump, that's right on your head. Had to put him to sleep, go to bed. I'm a star, drop 50 and left. From the logo, like I'm Steph. Put it up, knock him down every time. Going hard like my life on the line. Catch me on the course, I would've dime. Never losing, I put it on mine. Had to get on my shell, I've been laying low. It get real when it comes to the playoffs. You fight with me, no one's the chaos.
Ladies and gentlemen, from La Casa de los Lobos, the Pit, here at the University of New Mexico, let's get ready to rumble!
Gotta hit you with the AAA. Hey, how's everybody doing? My name's Ryan Tamori. Welcome to the Pit Press Live. Very exciting show to you tonight. One of my favorite guests, and I'm glad Eric messaged this guy. Before that, want to thank our sponsors: Dulce River Bakery and Coffee, Affordable Solar, Turquoise Desert Tap Room, Tim Baca Sr., Tim Baca Jr. over at Hydro Bar. Affordable Service Heating, Plumbing, and Air Conditioning for your HVAC needs in the Albuquerque and Rio Rancho area. Affordable Service has been in business in New Mexico since 1986. I'm starting to feel old. And is still locally owned. During that time, they've served more than 40,000 customers, providing complete residential and light commercial HVAC services, including heating, cooling, electrical, and plumbing. Affordable Service takes pride in its staff and commitment to Albuquerque and Rio Rancho community. I know we are a UNM centric podcast. Tomorrow night, Nick Coppola will be joining us from the Las Cruces Sun News. NMSU is still reeling from the Jerry Kill, Diego Pavia area. That game has just gone final about 5 minutes ago on Conference USA weeknights. Maction is back next week, baby. Can't wait. Can't wait to flush money down the toilet next week on Maction. New Mexico State lost to Mr. Worldwide University and FIU 34-13. The Aggies trailed 7-6 at halftime. They did not look good in the second half. They got outscored 27-7. Brandon Nunez, who started at quarterback, finished with 12 passing yards. Eric Rivers, wide receiver for FIU, broke a school record. 2-6. According to Nick Coppola, NMSU's bowl hopes are gone. They get Western Kentucky and Texas A&M next. Want to go to my business partner in this endeavor, and I think Rick might be joining us at some point. Rick Thompson, Mr. Eric Malton. Eric, how you doing?
Hey, I'm good, Ryan. Glad basketball season's back. I wasn't able to attend last night, kind of bummed out about it, but I did listen to the radio. Rob Portnoy was on the call, just kind of looking over some of the stats. A little too many turnovers for my liking, but we'll get into that a little bit later on the show. But happy to be joining you and Coach and Rick a little bit later tonight. So let's get into it.
We really appreciate our next guest, and I'm happy that he kind of drops at a dime for us. You can catch him at the host of the Top in the Mountain West podcast, talking all Mountain West Conference basketball. You can catch him on Twitter at Coach Moser. His name is Mr. Tom Moser from my neck of the woods on the East Coast of Delaware. Coach, how you doing tonight?
Good, Ryan. Eric, always happy to be with you guys. You've come a long way. I remember when you first started up about 12 months ago or so. Maybe it wasn't even 12 months, but you how long ago was it? A year and a half now?
Yeah. 2 years.
Year and a half. Yeah. Right in the early part of 2 seasons ago, you had me on. It was just an audio podcast, and now you got quite the intro set up there and going every day live. So credit to you guys, and I'm always happy to talk Lobo hoops and obviously Mountain West. So yeah, let's get after it.
I will give my thoughts, since I think clearly Tom wasn't at the game last night unless he was there and caught a red eye home or flew back early this morning. UNM defeated UTEP in an exhibition that was a charity event for UNM's Children's Hospital. And as I do the airline pilot thing there again, UNM held on to win 74-70. I really didn't watch much of the beginning of the second half. I was schmoozing with people I hadn't seen in a while as I went to the bathroom. Ed was there. I wish Ed could join us tonight. He was really in awe of UTEP's defense and Joe Golding. Joe Golding, of course, came from Abilene Christian, and they beat Texas in the first round of the 2021, the pandemic tournament. And I forgot the kid's name, but he ran up to the TV and then the hordes down. That was, I'd have to find that kid's name, but that Joe Golding was the head coach there. They lost in the next round, but obviously a 14-3. So Joe Golding is the smaller schools and has done it. Some of the key things that stood out to me, and I know it was kind of to start the game, was True Washington. I think who had kind of struggled to shoot last year. He came out, he had 2 threes right in a row. It was 13-2. UTEP fought back. UTEP led the nation, I think, or was one of the leading teams in the country last year when it came to personal fouls and fouls. And last night they had 27. UNM had 25 turnovers. So I think you can put 2 and 2 together. I'm not an X's and O's guy. Coach, I mean, no disrespect. I want your full thoughts. I'm going to throw it to Eric because at least he listened to the game last night. But I'm interested to see how you can break down a box score. I'd be really fascinated by that. Eric, listening to the game, what did you think?
Well, the first thing that jumped out to me listening was True Washington coming out with the back-to-back threes. I think that was huge. True had I think we saw him grow up a lot last year, from coming in as a freshman, not really knowing what his role was going to be, but it was pretty clear towards the end of the season last year, especially during the Mountain West play and Mountain West tournament. And even in the one game they played against Clemson in the NCAA tournament, he was not afraid. He was one of the guys that was really good at kind of slashing to the basket. And we were kind of questioning coming into this season, what kind of role is he going to see? And I think it's pretty clear now that he's going to be the guy that's going to be the aggressor. He's going to be the bulldog. He's going to be the one to kind of inherit or take over what Jalen House was last year. And he addressed that in the post-game presser with the hype man, the guy that's going to get the crowd involved, the high energy, the guy that's going to play really good defense. And it's nice that he's able to hit some outside shots like that, but I'd like to see him get more opportunities. But then again, the turnover piece of it was a little alarming to see. But looking overall at the box score, we had about 8 guys in double digit in overall minutes, 2 guys floating around the 7 to 8 minutes. So you could tell Patino was just kind of spreading the wealth and getting guys into some situations, getting them on the floor, letting them kind of adapt to the rhythm and pace of the game. But we would never see that in a normal game. I thought the starters got pulled a little bit too early, but they jumped out to that 13-2 lead. And then they kind of pulled off the gas a little bit and let UTEP crawl back in the air there. But CJ Nolan, I noticed he was 0 for 4 just looking at the box score. I don't think he was real aggressive. But UTEP, you alluded to that stat. And yeah, the Miners led the country last year in turnovers forced per possession. So It's just the style of play, and definitely kind of a direct result of that is the fouls. They led the country in that stat for a reason, because they're high energy. They're going to be aggressive. They're going to be all over the ball handlers, and that's just the style of play that they play with. But and don't forget that this UTEP team is no pushover. They returned 8 significant players from last year. I think it was 11 total players from last year's roster. Either some guys sat out, redshirted, but this is an experienced team. They've stuck together. They've been in that program, and they were 1 game away from the NCAA tournament last year by reaching the Conference USA championship game. So I think it was a good test for UNM to get. I think they played 2 really strong teams in exhibitions and came away with wins in both of them. But I do like the experience that kind of posed to them, and they're not getting pushovers. They're going to get teams with players that know how to play, players that are going to play aggressive. And it's not like, and this isn't a knock on Western New Mexico or Highlands or Eastern or anything like that, but I think these 2 games definitely prepare UNM for what's to come early in the season, man. They play UCLA in 10 or 11 days. So I think it was a good prep. I'm glad that they won. I'm glad that they spread the minutes out, but I'm really still interested to see in how the starting 5 kind of rounds out who's going to be the 6th man off the bench, what that rotation is going to look like, because we're not going to see 8 guys getting double-digit minutes. So I think there's a lot of high hopes for the freshmen too, and Milosevic and Cade Dotson. But I'm rambling now. I want to hear what Tom's thoughts are and see how well he can break down the box score. So
This is
handing
where
it
we're
over to
putting
you, Tom.
this is where we're putting you to the test in your X's and O's when you look at the box score. Your first impressions on UNM.
So the first thing you got to do is you have to decide how serious you're taking an exhibition, right? As I put the air quotes on exhibition, because I know for a fact that some coaches, they'd rather lose. They want they won't tell their guys that, but they don't even want to win, so they have something on tape to look at and to light a fire under their guys. They don't even care about winning the exhibition. So I don't put a lot of stock in the final score. I know some people may look at it and say, "Oh, they only beat UTEP by 4." That didn't stick out to me at all. Normally, if this was a non-conference game and I didn't see it because I was watching another game or whatever, yeah, I dig into the box score and look at all the stats. Some of the ones that you mentioned, some of the ones that Eric mentioned, 26, 25 turnovers. They shot pretty poorly from 3. So there's a lot of things in there team-wise. But again, I didn't see it, so I don't know how exactly they played. And I'm sure there were a lot of combinations out on the floor that you're not going to see at all ever in meaningful minutes. Maybe at the end of a 30-point win in the non-con, you might see it, but you're never going to see it in meaningful minutes. My main takeaway, and I tweeted this out after the game, and this is what my one concern, I guess, at this point would be, is the depth. And I say that, again, not watching the game. The starting 5, I know Amzil struggled from downtown last night, but he did have 11 rebounds. The starting 5 looks pretty good. And I'm expecting some of the guys on the bench to be pretty productive. And I get it. It's the first game. There's going to be some rust, and they're playing against a seasoned veteran team who plays hard. And Patino probably scheduled like this on purpose. But when the first thing that stuck out at me right away when looking at the box score, Jeff Grammer posted it. You had the plus minus, all 5 starters in the plus, double figures in the plus, and all 7 bench guys are in the minus. And it was pretty substantial, 2 in the minus. So not one bench guy was on the floor and had a plus score, okay, for when he's on the floor, the old hockey plus minus statistic. So that kind of worries me a little bit. Again, I do get that. So take, for example, CJ Nolan probably played more on the floor last night with other bench guys than he will next Friday against UCLA. He'll be out on the floor much more with True and Donovan and whoever next Friday. I get that. But that just looking through some of the other numbers for some of the bench guys, that's kind of where my worry was. And I tweeted that out just to ask kind of Lobo fans who were in attendance what their thoughts were. Got, as is normally the case with Lobo fans, very good, honest feedback from many of them about what happened. And some of them I think were thought I was ragging on them for only winning by 4. That wasn't my point at all. Like I'm fine with that. Like again, 13-2, playing a lot of guys, not an issue at all. Okay. I just worry when you get into the heart of Mountain West play, you got to be more than 7 deep, and I'm not even mentioning the I word, but you have to have 7.5, 8.5 guys that you can use when you go to Viejas or up to Boise or some of the other top teams in the conference. And of course that could come. It's one exhibition game. They've, practiced for a few weeks, whatever. But that's something I'm keeping an eye on now as they get going here in the non-con.
Eric, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think he's spot on, especially that when you look at the plus minus, it's like a complete drop off from the starting 5 to the rest of the guys. But I think it could be, the reason could be based on a few different elements. And I think you have to factor in that there's a lot of new faces. These guys have been playing against each other for the last, over the summer, still haven't adapted to each other's skill sets. The anticipation in the offensive scheme, in this game, they weren't rolling out a whole lot of offensive sets. True Washington talked about it in the post-game presser that they were just running some basic stuff out there. And so when you are doing things like that, you kind of anticipate you're playing with a new guy on your team. You can anticipate where they're going to be in this offensive set. If there's a little bit of ball pressure applied, things are going to get thrown out of whack a little bit, because I don't think that they're seeing that level of defensive pressure maybe in practice. It's playing at a different pace. There's 10,000 fans there. There's a bunch of different elements that are being thrown at you that you're not necessarily used to. Some of these guys have never played in front of that many people before. It's different when you're out there. So there are some nerves, there's some jitters, there's some factors with getting kind of into the rhythm of the game with some other team members. And I think that's going to come later in the year. I mean, we kind of dealt with this last year when Nelly was literally arriving in Albuquerque 24 or 48 hours before the first exhibition game started, right? So like it took him a while to be able to adapt to his teammates, to be able to learn the offense, to be able to kind of just adjust to the rhythm of the game. So I think there's still a lot to be told here. I don't think the score total tells any story at all. I don't think the turnovers tell the full story either, but it's a practice game, and you roll the ball out there and see how these guys are going to play. So I'm looking for the Lobos to get better out of this. I think it pointed out some flaws that they kind of poke some holes in their game, but I think they're going to come out better because of it. And I'm glad that they scheduled UTEP and Santa Clara, because these are two really well-developed teams, two strong programs, and both teams are going to be making a run for their conference championship too. So I want to move on a little bit. I want to get Tom's, I guess, feedback or his kind of ideas, thoughts around other Mountain West exhibitions. Some of the ones that stand out to me are like San Diego State beating UCLA pretty significantly. And other games like that. Not a whole lot of other games.
BYU beat Boise State 91-85.
Yeah. So, Tom, I'm kicking it back over to you.
So the big thing with San Diego State is they were missing 3 guys, right? We all know that McKinney was out, Waters was out, and I think Boyd was out too. So they're missing 2 starters and probably their first guard off the bench. UCLA, as we know, formidable, going to be a tough task for the Lobos in Vegas, suburban Vegas next Friday. And they won the game. So again, don't put a lot of stock in the fact that they won, but they had some pretty impressive stats. Now, BJ Davis went for 28. I don't think you can count on that happening every night out, right? He was probably not really, I don't even know if Mick Cronin's going over a scouting report in depth for an exhibition game, right? Or a secret, that wasn't even exhibition, it was a secret scrimmage. So if that's a regular season game, I'm sure UCLA is preparing for a much different. Before a scrimmage, he probably doesn't know that these guys are out. They have very little tape on BJ Davis. He didn't play much last year. So now that the word is out, we know Reese Waters is out for weeks, minimum of weeks. Okay. BJ Davis came in last year as a semi highly touted freshman guard and couldn't crack the rotation. So I don't want to say I wasn't high on him, but I wasn't expecting a lot out of him. Now he's going to be forced into playing some more minutes, maybe off the ball, or maybe as the ball handler, he and Boyd sharing the ball with Reese Waters out. It's going to open up a lot of minutes in the backcourt. If he can do that, provide that scoring punch, it raises their level a little bit, because obviously that's a good win regardless of exhibition or not. You're down 3 guys, you really only have 6 rotation guys then, and you can beat UCLA. That's pretty good for them. As far as Boise State, almost their 2 exhibitions or scrimmages, if you will, were equally impressive. They really took Washington to the woodshed. Now, I mean, we all know the deal there. Danny Sprinkles knew. He took Osabor with him, but that's a pretty new roster. And if I know Sprinkle from watching him 30 games last year, 35 games, whatever it was, I know he doesn't give a damn about the exhibition score either. So he's tinkering with rotations and lineups. Boise's a veteran group. They got, a handful of 4th and 5th year guys. So that score was not a surprise to me at all that Boise handled them by 20. I think equally impressive is their game over the weekend that apparently went overtime against BYU. And the funny thing is, I know it's social media, but you can tell a lot by the comments, okay, on social media. And on BYU's page, or somewhere on somebody's page on Twitter, when that score was posted, the BYU fans were having a canary, like they barely beat a Division II team. And people had to check them and be like, dude, Boise's pretty good. What are you freaking out about? So what that tells me, because I don't really study a lot of these Big 12 and Power 4 teams unless we're going to play them, is that BYU is pretty highly touted. They are pretty high in KenPom. They have a new coach, but some talent. They're expected to be pretty good in the Big 12. For Boise to take them to overtime, again, pretty impressive. So a lot to like there about Boise, which again, as a veteran team, is to be expected. One team who has not lived up to the standards that some expected in the scrimmages has been UNLV. I guess they lost to Cal Santa Barbara in a close game, and they beat San Diego in overtime, 2 kind of middling teams in their respective conferences, the Big West and the WCC. Now, the big thing for them, probably more important for UNLV than San Diego State with Reese Waters being out, is DJ Thomas missed the scrimmage, and he's going to miss the first week to 2 weeks of the regular season. And obviously, we all know that would be the equivalent for New Mexico of Donovan Dent being out for a week or 2. I mean, he's the engine that makes them go. He's a preseason first teamer in the conference, potential to be one of the top 2 or 3 players in the conference. I mean, if he is out, they have some other nice players, but without DJ Thomas on the floor, they don't have a chance to be competitive at the top of the Mountain West. So I guess they're being, overly cautious here, which they should. It's probably going to cost them any chance to win their Memphis game next weekend, even though it's at the Thomas and Mack, which is unfortunate because that would have been a nice resume builder for the conference. But let's get him healthy so he's back on the floor when the time really matters in January and February. So I don't know if you had anybody else. I think I went through most of them. I guess I'll finish up quickly here so I can let you guys get in here. I know Colorado State had a close loss against Washington State. Washington State's in a rebuild, but look, Colorado State, I think from what I gathered, they were winning that game for portions, and then they just used a lot of guys, as you do in scrimmages, and they're trying to figure out rotations too. So I wouldn't put a lot of stock into that one. Fresno State, who is kind of an enigma this year with their new coach, the old dribble drive guy, Wahlberg. They beat Loyola Marymount, who is pretty highly thought of in the West Coast Conference. San Jose State hung with Arizona State. Now, that probably gets devalued a little bit because if you paid attention to it, Arizona State lost by 60 the other night against Duke. So maybe in retrospect, that wasn't such a good result for San Jose State. And then I guess Nevada did pretty well. Beating Oregon. It wasn't really I don't think they kept score, but apparently they had more points, if you will, however you want to grade it, when they scrimmaged against Oregon. So pretty good results for most of the Mountain West teams, I would say.
I do have to ask you about ASU and Duke, because I had the game on. My buddy has an 75-inch TV, and I'm always at his house every Sunday. And then he's got two 50-inch TVs above. It's the beauty about being a bachelor and making really good money in Albuquerque, no matter where you are. But I put Duke and ASU on because I saw it. I know you don't read too much into that, and I was trying to. I mean, Duke is. A lot of people think Duke can win. You know, Jay Schreier can get it done this year. And I think he's done a pretty good job of stepping in and those massive shoes to fill. I don't want to steal away from the West Coast Conference, Mountain West. But when you see an exhibition like that, when they're a D1 school and you have somebody like Bobby Hurley, who's I didn't realize he had been there that long. He'd been there. He's been at ASU for 10 years. I felt like it was just yesterday he got Buffalo to the tournament out of the MAC. But I know you said and I thought that was fascinating that you'd rather lose the exhibition and you're not trying to show as many plays. And a couple of media guys asked True Washington and Richard Pitino that last night. Is that loss glaring to a certain degree? And I'm not trying to focus on ASU, but when you saw that, I wanted to pick your brain. What did you think of that?
Yeah, well, first of all, like Hurley, Krzyzewski, if you saw any of the stuff that went along with the game, and I'll be quick with this because, it's not a Mountain West team, but like Hurley played for Krzyzewski at Duke. They won back-to-back national titles. He's very, very highly thought of in the Duke community. Krzyzewski went to the exhibition. They had him on the court before the game. They made a big deal about him hugging and all this stuff. So, like, there's no part of Duke, even though it's Shire and he's not really correlated with Hurley, there's no part of Duke that's trying to rub it in and run it up on Bobby Hurley. Like, there's no bad blood there. He's a loved former player. So they're not trying to rub it in and run the score up on you. So that is alarming. There's a difference from not really caring about whether you win or not, so you have teaching points with your team, to losing by 60. I don't care if you're playing the Boston Celtics. So that's quite a worry for Hurley. I mean, obviously he needs to figure some things out. Nobody wants to lose by 60 because then, like, that's alarm, like you said, alarm bells going off in a hurry. There's no doubt about it. Absolutely.
We already talked about it before we went live. I'm a New Mexican, and my friends will give me shit. I want to believe I'm a New Jerseyite. I'm not. I mean, I live there. I got roots there. But I'm Bobby. The Hurleys are from Jersey City. That's why I love Bobby and Danny Hurley. I absolutely love them. And then their dad is a legend up in North Jersey along the Hudson. We had the pleasure. Josh Udesi had a great year last year for Utah State. He now transferred to San Jose State. Will McClendon, they were the two there with Tim Miles. I had the pleasure of covering Tim Miles when he was at CSU a billion years ago, when I was at the student newspaper at UNM. Tim Miles is highly regarded as a good basketball coach. I think he's just, I'm not trying to be cliche, but he's got a lot of respect and he seems like a really nice guy. What would be your outlook with getting two guys like that to San Jose State? And what do you know about them heading into 2024-25?
Well, McClendon, he played, I think it was 4th or 5th most minutes for UCLA last year. Now, it wasn't a standard UCLA team. They didn't make the tournament. They were pretty bad for large parts of the middle of the season. They might have had some injuries. Not a great year for Cronin, but he played the 4th or 5th most minutes on the team, and that's a power conference Pac-12 team. So he obviously is a talented player. So that's a great get for Miles. And Uduje, like, I'm pretty sure he was 6th man of the year in the Mountain West a year ago. And I don't know that Utah State wanted to lose him. I think that was a case of, just changing coach, maybe slight change in philosophy. He recruited brought in some other transfers. And I think Uduje, wasn't guaranteed minutes that he wanted for his last season. And let's face it, he's going to have the opportunity for more minutes at San Jose State than he is at Utah State. So he made the decision to go somewhere for his last year to play more. And that's great. That probably will work out for him because I think he's a very nice player. So I'm actually high on San Jose State if they can stay healthy. They don't have near the depth that the high-end teams do in the conference. So any injuries is going to set them back. And that's exactly what happened to them last year. And I don't think they can crack the top 5, if you will, of the conference, but I think they're significantly at this point to me above like the bottom 3 teams. And I wouldn't be surprised if they can knock off somebody at the top on a given night in league play.
Kind of sticking with San Jose State, and I know that you mentioned Boise State. We talked to we had a gentleman from the NBC affiliated on our show finally, and I know everybody in the media in this town, and I'd never actually sat down with Lee Free. He played basketball, very, very knowledgeable, and he's covered UNM for over 30 years. But when San Jose State loses Alvaro Cardenas and he transfers to Boise State, he seemed to be quite a nice spark. I think he came off the bench last year. I could be wrong, but he was a nice spark for San Jose State. Lee kind of mentioned that he wasn't too high, and it wasn't a diss on Boise State. He talked about, how great Almar Stanley was, and of course, Degenhardt getting all the love, and we've watched Degenhardt the last 2-3 years, and he's phenomenal. He kind of mentioned the lack of the backcourt in Boise. What are your thoughts on that? Do you agree, disagree with that?
So I'm actually pretty high on their Cardenas acquisition, if you will, trade or free agency, whatever you want to call it these days. Like he was a 2-year, he's a 2-year starter for San Jose State, and he was a starter on the team 2 years ago. Now look, they didn't make the NCAA tournament, but this is San Jose State we're talking about here, right? And they had Omari Moore, who was the player of the year in the conference, but Cardenas was the point guard, and he was feeding Moore, running the show. Like, he's not going to pop off the page as like a 5-star athlete, but he's what you like as a coach, as a true point guard. Okay. And Boise State's number 1 liability last year was their point guard play. They tried to bring in Roddy Anderson, and he just was not a good fit with Leon Rice. And it cost them the league championship, and it cost them a chance, probably a win in the NCAA tournament. They lost a nail biter to Colorado in the first 4. They lost the conference regular season title by a game to Utah State. And, not to knock on Roddy Anderson, but he didn't quite live up to the flash and the athleticism that he has with how he played the game as a point guard. And Leon Rice, being kind of, an old school, like, he wants his point guards to play like a point guard should play. And that's what Cardenas is going to do. He doesn't care if he scores 19 points or if he scores 4 points. If he's open and he gets kicked out because they're doubling Degenhardt and he takes a 3, sure, he'll take it. And he's going to hit 42%. He can drive the lane if he needs to, but he is going to be the facilitator for that Boise State team that has some pieces. Now, the rest of the backcourt, there are questions around because it's unproven guys, it's young guys, it's guys who, we have not seen a whole lot of. So their ceiling is going to be determined by how those unknowns do. They have 3 known quantities. They're 3 very good known quantities. They were all named first team, which don't get me started on the fact that they named 10 players at a first team all conference in the preseason. But when you have 3 of them, you're in pretty good place. The problem is their other 2 starters and their 2 or 3 bench guys, they're unknowns. And so if they play to their abilities, this is a league championship caliber team, and that's why many people have them there. If they struggle and Leon Rice is just kind of looking for pieces to put together to have guys on the floor, then you're going to see them in the 3-4 mix of the Mountain West fighting for an at-large bid.
Eric, I will throw it to you.
Yeah, I think it's been the talk of all summer with us, especially on this podcast or live stream, that the Mountain West is pretty top heavy, right? There's going to be some changeover, but there's some really good teams with a lot of notoriety. It's what built the Mountain West into the Mountain West over the last 10 years. But when you look at these top heavy teams and you kind of look at the bottom tier of the league, I don't need to mention those teams, but the one dark horse team that has kind of gone through this cycle year in and year out is a team like Utah State. And they're kind of in the same exact situation that they were in the year before Danny Sprinkle took over. And I don't think anyone saw that coming. They were picked to finish dead last in the conference. And now this year, I think they were picked to finish like 6th or 7th in the league. And they have some really interesting players. transfers on their team that come over, and then their head coach. I think Ryan and Rick and Jacob actually had an interview with Coach Calhoun at Mountain West Media Day. The guy's just a proven winner, and he's known for kind of rebuilding programs. And he was successful at a Youngstown State in the Horizon League, where it's just not been easy to win at all. They don't have the resources, but somehow he got a way to get these players to buy into that program. And now he's going over to a Utah State where they do have some more resources, but they have the fan support. They have the student section support. They do have more of a following. So he's going to get that there. And he was able to retain some players like Ian Martinez, right? They also like Isaac Johnson, the 7-footer, Mason Falslev, who was was he co-freshman of the year last year?
First team all freshman.
Okay. But then
Toppin and DJ Thomas were the co-freshmen.
You're right. But then they get that transfer in from Utah Valley and Drake Allen, who's kind of a proven scorer. So they've got some interesting guys, and I just wanted to give them a little bit of love on here because they don't get mentioned very much, but they could be a dark horse in this league. And I think this league is going to be very, very competitive again, inside it out. And it's going to be tough to win on the road. There's some raucous arenas around the Mountain West, and man, you need to fly out west and catch a few before the Mountain West goes away.
I know. Well, I was trying to piece together like a week long 4-day trip, like a Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, where I could hit 4 games in 5 days based on the schedule. I would just need to see how that would work as far as logistics with flights and which places are near each other that maybe I could drive and figure this out. And that's something that I may do next year in the last year of the conference, and maybe just try and shoot out for the conference tournament in Vegas in March this year. That's kind of my plan right now. Let me just quick follow up on Utah State is they unless you live in one of these areas and by the campus, like, Ryan could go to the game last night. The only action that you've been able to see so far was Utah State, because the Mountain West Network did live stream their exhibition game against Weber State a week and a half ago, and I was very impressed with them. Now, I know it's an exhibition, but Weber State's a competitive team in the Big Sky. They have some nice players. They're well coached, and Utah State looked really good. They have a lot of players. They have a great combination, as you see some Drake Allen highlights right there on the screen. They have you mentioned it. You mentioned Falslev, Martinez, Isaac Johnson. Don't forget the do-it-all dirty work guy, Carson Templin. 4 guys return that can play. And then you add guys like you're watching Drake Allen right here. They have a couple other guys who are freshmen of the year in their low major conferences, but they add an Oregon State guy in Dexter Akano who looked really good in the exhibition. And the good thing is for Calhoun, as you mentioned it, Youngstown State was just like they're a nothing program 10 years ago before Calhoun gets here. Now, the only mark against him is he didn't get them to the NCAA tournament, but he won regular season championships and won a lot of games there. He's a Bob Huggins disciple, so he obviously knows how to coach. Now, like you said, he's at a place that loves their hoops. The fans there are rabid. They're crazy. They had the place packed for the exhibition game in the middle of October, for crying out loud. And with that roster of 12 guys, as you get a look at some Martinez highlights, but it's going to push those guys in practice because they're all going to be fighting for minutes, and anybody who, takes a practice off or doesn't perform, somebody else is going to take their spot. And that's the good thing about having a lot of competition for those spots. So I'm like you, Eric. I would not be surprised at all. Most people have them in the 4, 5, 6 range. I would not be surprised if they finish top 3 and make the NCAA tournament again.
So you want to hear something interesting that I came across today, Tom, was we hear about Ken Pom, right? Ken Pom is the god of basketball analytics, right? College basketball. And then there's a few other ones that have come out, like the Evan Maya side, I think has been starting to get a little bit of love. And then Haslametrics, not sure if you've come across that one, but I was looking at that earlier today, and the Haslametrics system put out kind of like a preseason poll, and basically it just projects where teams are going to finish in conference based off of offensive efficiency and a few other metrics that they like to measure. This guy had Haslametric, Eric Haslametric, I think is his name, that runs this site, but he he had Utah State projected number 1 in the Mountain West, and it was all based off offensive efficiency because you have guys like Ian Martinez, and then you got that transfer coming in from Utah Valley. I think overall they had 4 or 5 transfers incoming that averaged more than double figures last year. So I go back and it resonates with me a little bit because with a program like UNM, we have some incoming transfers. Not any one of them is a real high end like volume score. I think CJ Nolan could potentially be a double digit score, but you don't have those big time high volume guys. You have to replace a Jalen House. You have to replace a Jamal Mashburn, who contributed to like 40 or 45% of the offense, and they're going to have to find that from somewhere. But it looks like Utah State kind of has that in a lot of sense. They also have some size, so it's just an interesting take from my end. And I was a little surprised to see that Utah State was at the top of the Mountain West in his projection. So just something I'm going to keep my eye on kind of as the season unfolds.
Well, it's interesting to say that. I'll just say one more thing quickly on that before we wrap up on Utah State is the reason why you just mentioned why Haslam has them number 1 is because they're extremely efficient offensively. And most people thought or assumed that their deficiencies this year would be on the defensive side of the floor. Then if they're offensive oriented, they have some guys who may not be considered defensive stalwarts. And so I think that the defense was the concern for people. Well, and this is one of the good things about watching the exhibition games. I didn't get to see this. Now, New Mexico didn't do it, or you guys would have said it, but maybe Boise State did try it, or maybe San Jose State did try it. But Utah State came out in that exhibition and played a 3-2 matchup zone, like John Chaney style, like from the 80s and 90s at Temple. Nobody plays a matchup zone. It's like very difficult to prepare for. And he played it for 40 minutes. So if he's going to do that, that's going to make you, it's just a whole nother thing to discuss, but that will change that. Well, they can't play defense because now you have to prepare for a zone, and it's a different kind of zone, and you don't see it all year. So it's another variable, and it's just a nice coaching move by Calhoun. If he knew his defense wasn't going to be as strong, that's going to upgrade them a little bit defensively. So that's something to keep an eye on as well.
I was going to ask about Nevada. They replaced 9 guys. We had the pleasure of talking to Nick Davidson, which I learned something very cool. He went to Mater Dei with Bryce Young and Trey Coleman. They were both great to talk to. Alfred and Craig Neal, which, on this show make our listeners probably cringe and
they're like curse words.
Yeah, it's they're the F-bombs. I'm trying to refrain from cursing on the show. But they replaced 9 guys. They've got a couple guys back from last year. Alfred has consistently done, a good job. And those guys had a sense of humor about blowing that lead against Dayton. And they have to replace Jared Lucas and Keenan Blackshear. What do you know about Nevada?
Yeah, that's the thing. They brought in some pretty decent transfers. The one thing I will say about the 2, I guess, highlight transfers, if you will, for them, Kobe Sanders and Ducell, are those guys, they don't come from winning programs. Okay, as you're looking at stats from Cal Poly here, and Kobe Sanders right now in the non-con here, they're 3-4. Maybe if we get a little bit later on in the highlights here in conference play, you can see what their record is. They were poor last year. Okay, they were not a very good basketball team. So he put up good numbers, but is that just putting up good numbers on a basketball on a bad team? I don't know. He's got the size. He different than Blackshear, somewhat similar though in the fact that he's big for a guard, right? And he can score the ball. We'll just have to see how he can compete at this level. Same thing with Ducell now. 2 years ago, there's no doubt he is as streaky and as good a shooter as there could be in the conference. But 2 years ago, significant minutes on a Wyoming team. Now, they were depleted with injuries 2 years ago, but they finished they finished at the bottom of the conference. And then last year, he makes his way over to Fresno and bottom of the conference. Now, he's not at fault for that, but he's got a lot of minutes and stats that are empty because they're not really providing, winning stuff. So these guys need to get in sync here with Alfred and what he's trying to do. Obviously, Davidson's a stud. Coleman is just your absolute glue guy who does everything that you want. He could probably score the ball more. Maybe he will this year now that Lucas and Blackshear are gone, but he didn't even really try to score it that much last year. He just wants to be out there defending. He can guard every position on the floor. He's probably going to, I think I read, finish this year, as long as he stays healthy, playing the most games in Nevada history. So credit to him for that. Helps that you get like 8 years now to play college, but that's another point. But I think that the whole thing is going to be, can they replace like the volume scoring of those two guys? Like Blackshear was inconsistent sometimes, but Lucas, man, he's like Reggie Miller light, right? You know, he gets under your skin if you're playing against him, but man, does he just run you off screens and catch the ball and shoot and make tough shots and make you want to just, throw something at him if he's in your gym. And I mean, that's tough stuff to replace. Those guys were linchpins of that team for the last 2 years. So I do like that team. I think there's a lot of pieces there and a lot to like. They just need somebody to step up, and hopefully for them, it's Sanders.
I wish Jacob was on with us, because he's we like Thursday nights are our night in January, February, and March, because we watch the big West Coast Conference. We love those games, and they're starting late for us. And I purposely have a Hawaii shirt because I can lose money on them at 10 o'clock on a Saturday night. But I watched a couple of Cal Poly games. I'm not going to say I'm an expert. Kobe Sanders could shoot. I think he's a very good addition at Nevada. Again, I'm not as I repeatedly say on the show, not an X's and O's guy. I do want to get your thoughts on some of the preseason rankings, but I wanted to ask about Wyoming, because Sundance Wicks is like the most interesting man maybe in college basketball to a certain degree. Joe Golding interrupted Richard Pitino's press conference last night to thank him. And I guess that's just who Joe Golding is. He's intense. He's in your face. And I've heard nothing but good things about him. But Sundance Wicks, I overheard talking to the Phil the 68 guys, and they were like, how many cups of coffee did you have this morning? He was like, I had 6. And we had the pleasure of talking to Kobe Newton and Cole Henry, and it's a rebuilding process in Wyoming. The reason I'm asking about them is because how interesting Sundance Wicks is, and Cole Henry and Kobe Newton, they just are kind of like we're here to play basketball. Cole Henry basically was like, I'd never left the Midwest, and he went to Northern Iowa and was a starting quarterback that got offers to play, starting quarterback D1, I think he said. What do you know about Wyoming, and do you think maybe they could shock some people? But it seems like Sundance Wicks, everybody seems to love it.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, it's certainly a home run hire, and I don't think the people in Wyoming, although the timing was odd, I don't think they're upset anymore about this change in coaching here. Linder bailed out, I think, towards the end of April, or it might have even been May, well after like most of the transfer stuff had taken place, for an assistant job. But his time was kind of wearing thin there. Sundance Wicks grew up in Wyoming, was an assistant there. So this is the job that he wants. Now, if he would win back-to-back Mountain West titles here the next 2 years, and they offered him a job at Arizona, I don't know that he would turn that down, because the money that they could pay him would far exceed what Wyoming could pay him. But, I think it would take quite a job to pry him out of here, because I think he wants to be here and he wants to turn it around. Now, you often hear the term in college football, like year zero. Like, this is kind of a year zero thing for Sundance Wicks. He does seem like a great coach. The players love playing for him. He did a great job last year turning around Green Bay, who was awful 2 years ago and for a few years prior to that, and got them up near contention in the Horizon League. The problem is the Mountain West is a lot better than the Horizon, and the talent gap is just too high. I know you could make the comparison of Utah State from last year, new coach, new roster, not much returning. I mean, I guess fool me once, shame whatever, right? Like, I just don't see it happening. They will win a couple games at home against top flight teams, maybe 2 games, I would say. I could see Sundance Wicks really stressing the importance of getting the culture back, getting the program back, establishing a home court advantage there in when they're good, is a tough place to play, but it's been kind of dead in there the last 2 years because they haven't been very good. So I can see him really stressing the importance of making that, like, protecting their home court. I can see him winning a couple games against good teams in the conference there. I don't see them finishing any higher than 7th, and I have them as 9th. I think next year they'll be much better. Give him a year to get his own players in there and hit the portal. He didn't have a chance to hit the portal because he came in and 90% of the players were already gone. So he was pretty much just picking up what was left over. But I do like the hire. I think he'll be great for that program. I just think the odds are stacked against him at this point.
Eric, do you have anything?
Yeah, just curious. I think the last team that we really haven't touched on is a team like Fresno. I don't think there's a lot of high expectations with Fresno, but I know that they made a change at head coach with moving to Vance Wahlberg, who has some experience. I don't know the exact number. I think he spent like 8 or 9 years as an assistant coach in the NBA, and then somehow found himself coaching high school basketball like the last couple of years. And I don't know if they pulled him out of retirement or what happened there, but what do you know about Fresno? And do you expect anything more than kind of where they've kind of floated at the bottom of the Mountain West the last decade?
It's a good question. So the thing with Wahlberg is I don't know his exact age. He's in his high 60s. So he had 2 largely unsuccessful seasons at Pepperdine, like 15-ish, 20 years ago, something around that range. Innovator really of the dribble drive. So if you don't know that, like he invented the dribble drive. So credit to him for that. Now he's been coaching high school and junior college ever since he left the Pepperdine job. And his winning percentage is something ridiculous, like 90%. So he obviously knows what he's doing. He has connections in the junior college world in California, and so that's how he has retooled his roster. If you're Fresno State, I think it was worth it to take a shot on somebody like this, right? Like he obviously isn't going to coach for that long because his age is up there, but you were really struggling at the end of the Hudson era. You might as well try something different, okay? And they did. They went outside the box here. This was a wow hire. Like what? Like some people were confused by it, didn't get it. They had to try something different. Like they're way behind the other programs in terms of their fan engagement right now is poor. Their recruiting is not very good. Their on-court product the last few years has been poor. So you have to try something different. The problem is with the dribble drive, assuming that's what he's going to run here, it's a read and react offense. It's something that takes time to practice. And now you're bringing all these new guys together from different systems. And, you can practice for a few weeks or a couple months all you want. You don't have that practice. You don't have the continuity for a year or a year and a half or 2 years that you used to have. It's just going to make it so much more difficult. So, look, it'll be completely different than the slow it down, bog it down type of defensive first mentality that they had under Hutt the last few years. They're going to try and get up and down and run. I think their scrimmage score against Loyola was 92-85. So he's going to try and run and get the scores up into the 80s. And maybe that's his angle there to try and change it up. But I just can't see it this year happening for Fresno.
Yeah, you're spot on with the JUCO signings. I was just looking at some of the guys that they had signed. Jasir Tremble was named a JUCO All-American last year, averaged 24 a game, a little bit on the smaller size, but is an elite shooter. And then you also have another guy, and where was I just looking at it?
He was 133 and 11 at Fresno City College from 2002 to 2006. Vance Wahlberg.
Yeah, and then Amar. Go ahead, finish that thought, Ryan. No, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say. He's been an assistant. That was one of the things I didn't know who he was, and before we went to Vegas, I was looking him up, and I was like, oh, he's assistant coach in the NBA. That's pretty impressive. But 130, I don't care what you are, 133 and 11. I didn't. And before I got to the overall conference, we didn't talk about them because of how good Nico Medved, and I love talking to him. I love Joe Scott, Nico Medved, and Leon Rice. They are the best. And Tom, I'm going to do it again to you because Joe Scott's a Tom's River guy. How does Colorado State replace Isaiah Stevens this year? And they've got Nick Clifford, who is probably, NBA worthy.
Yeah, look, if you said it about Medved, if it wasn't Medved, and this is one of the reasons I love the league, because I think the coaching acumen is very, very high. And that Medved's right at the top of that list. If it was not Medved running that show, if it was somebody else, and I'm not taking it to the Mountain West, it could be anybody. If it was just an average college coach, I would think this team this year finishes 8th or 9th in the conference. That's why I have Colorado State up at 6, strictly on the Nico Medved. And I say that because you don't lose in Isaiah Stevens and just kind of get over it. It doesn't happen. You can bring Nate Clifford back, and that's great. But Nate Clifford was the beneficiary of Isaiah Stevens playing alongside him last year. I mean, he was a good player for Colorado, but he transferred out of Colorado a year and a half ago because, he wanted more opportunity and wasn't maximizing out for the Buffs. Came to Colorado State, fit in better, largely because of Isaiah Stevens. So the point guard position this year for the Rams worries me. They have they did bring in a lot of transfers, guys that fit Medved's system, and we're going to see how it goes. They're a middling team for me. I think their floor and their ceiling are kind of the same. Like, I don't see a scenario where they creep up into the top 3. I said I could see that happening for Utah State. I don't think that can happen for Colorado State. But I don't think they'll fall all the way down to the basement either, because I respect Medved too much. And, they have a great staff too. It's not just Medved. Farouk Manesh from Northern Iowa is there, and they brought some decent players in. So I just see them in the middle of the pack. They'll win a couple games at home against good teams because it's tough to win there. But I just can't see them getting back towards the NCAA tournament conversation. Hope I'm wrong, but that's my thought on it.
Yeah, what's your knee-jerk reaction with a player like Nate Clifford? I think he's by far one of the most talented and gifted players in the Mountain West due to his length, his shooting, and his slashing ability. I mean, he put his name in the NBA hat there for a while, tested out the combine, and then ended up choosing to come back and play at one more year at Colorado State. Now, you're a coach, and you've spent plenty of time in the game. You know what you're talking about. How does a Nate Clifford, how does his game translate into being more of a guy that's probably going to be controlling the offense, right? Have the ball more in his hands when you don't have the point guard that he's had the last couple of years. Now it's a different role, and you're not coming off the ball for screens, right? You're not trying to come off it and create when you're doing that, coming off curls and whatnot. You're going to have the ball most of the time. So how does his game translate into a role change like that?
So that's a slight worry for me. Now, obviously, there are not going to be many defenders who are guarding Stevens. It's not like the other team put their best defender on Stevens and put a 6'2" guard on Clifford, and now it's going to be different this year. He was guarded by good wing defenders last year. We talked about Trey Coleman for Nevada before. He was guarded by good wing defenders, but it's a lot easier to get the ball in your preferred situation or position when you have Isaiah Stevens running the offense. And when you don't, if the scout on your point guard isn't what it was, it's not going to be what it was on Isaiah Stevens. The focus can be on you a lot more. So when you are in the scout in the locker room of Utah State, as we're watching right now, you're hammering on Clifford. So you're taking away what Clifford wants the most. And it's harder to do that last year, for example, when you're trying to take away Isaiah Stevens. You're saying, we can't let Stevens get into the paint. We can't let him penetrate, because then the defense collapses and we're going to kick out and we're going to get open shooters. We can't let him penetrate. So you can't say that about everybody, right? You can't say, well, we can't let him do this. We can't let him do this. We can't let him do this. You have to pick your poison. And last year, the poison against Colorado State was, we can't let Isaiah Stevens get into the paint and control, what everybody else is doing. Now, he did it because he was that good. But now this year, the focal point is going to be, look, we can't let Nate Clifford operate at the top of the key and just ISO it like LeBron James does in the NBA. So now we're going to start denying Clifford the ball, or we're going to start doing other things that make it difficult. So he's really going to be challenged. And this is where Medved's offensive, I used this term a minute ago, but his offensive acumen is going to come into play, because they're going to have to be creative and come up with different ways to get Clifford the ball in scoring situations.
Yeah, you also have to factor in who's going to be the second scorer too, because Clifford's not going to be able to pour it in every
Yep.
single match all the time. So, man, I really appreciate your breakdowns and your knowledge of basketball. You can tell you spend a lot of time. So, Ryan, what you got?
Tom, I don't want to keep you much longer because I know what time it is on the East Coast. When you saw the preseason rankings, Boise #1, UNM #2, Nevada 3, San Diego State, UNLV, Utah State 6, that top 6 and 7, and Colorado State at 7, feels like it's going to be jumbled again. It's going to be jumbled together again, as I jokingly called it last year, the last 2 years, at the gauntlet of death around the country. And then, the bottom half probably is what it is. It seems like they all kind of snuck one at home. But when you look at that and your top, what you picked, what do you feel it's a preseason media poll, who really cares? But what did you think of that when it was released at media days?
Yeah, I kind of expected it. I actually, I think I went Boise 1, and then I flip-flopped Nevada and New Mexico. I was really close on them at 2 and 3, and that's where I had 2 and 3 and San Diego State 4. So, I wasn't surprised at it. The one thing that did surprise me, and I think I tweeted this out, was the fact that there were 6 different teams that had first place votes. I was kind of surprised by that. I don't know the exact rules about who you're allowed to vote for and who you're not allowed to vote for, but I was surprised that 6 teams got a first place vote. Boise's pretty strong, and the fact that they had 3 all-conference performers back, I thought, they did get 3/4 of the first place votes. So, that wasn't completely surprising to me. I guess, if there was one thing that surprised me, it was that maybe San Diego State was all the way down at 4, because so many people, I don't want to call them lazy, but they'll just put the name brand up there like they did last year. I, even though I was kind of new with the potting stuff last year, everybody had San Diego State first last year, and I didn't. I had them second. Now, they ended up finishing 4th or 5th, but point being, they were just up there because they were San Diego State and they just made a national title game, even though there's no correlation from year to year. So I was, credit to them for not just sticking them up there because it's a name brand, because there's good programs up there. New Mexico, Nevada, Boise State, and San Diego State. Nobody's going to be surprised if any of those teams finish 1, 2, 3 in any order, as you said.
Tyson Dagenhart's player of the year was preseason player of the year, Kobe Sanders, newcomer, and Pharaoh Compton, which is by far one of the best names ever. Those are preseason player of the years. Did you think any different of that?
No, I would have went Dagenhart too. Obviously, DJ Thomas, you could make a play for a lot of those guys. And we'll have to see how these guys do in a non-con here. I think you can keep an eye on, we mentioned him earlier. You showed a bunch of his highlight packages, but you could consider Ian Martinez. I would, had I only listed 5, I would have had him on my first 5 for sure. And then, DJ Thomas, Donovan Dent, Dagenhart, and I probably would have had to think about my 5th guy, but maybe Clifford, I guess. As far as freshmen, I don't know. Newcomer, Sanders seems like a fair one. You can't really count Cardenas because he was in the league already. So, but somebody is going to come out of the woodwork and surprise us the way that some guys did last year. Nobody had Osabor as a first-team guy last year at this point, right? 12 months ago. Nobody had Darius Brown as a first-team guy 12 months ago. So those guys were instrumental in Utah State, and we don't know who the surprise guys are for this year. That's part of the fun. And, I'm looking forward to seeing and finding out who they are.
Drake Allen. That's another one.
Drake Allen, maybe.
Lastly, just from a national perspective, who do you, it's going to be the usual suspects, but who do you like nationally as far as, coming into March? I know you predominantly watch the Mountain West, but anybody nationally that maybe nobody's talking about?
Oh, as far as under the radar teams, that I'm, The Big Ten is just so balanced. I've read some good things about Illinois as like not a non-top 10 team. I think Illinois got some upside. I don't know the rosters of these other teams the way I did 20 years ago because they changed so much. Like the turnover is a ridiculous percentage, and I can't keep track of all of it. I'm trying to keep track of the Mountain West guys, and so I'll get familiar with them as I'm watching highlights and reading about them during the season. So my guess on these teams is not quite as strong, but I think Illinois got some upside. Obviously, you got to look at your Big Ten suspects. I think Iowa State is pretty highly thought of after that initial batch of Houston and Kansas and Duke and teams like that. So, like you said, the usual suspects. We'll see who else is out there floating around, I guess, once the MTEs are take place here in November.
You can follow him at Coach Moser on Twitter, and you can listen to his podcast, Top of the Mountain West. We really, Tom, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us. My
pleasure. Like I said, I love talking with you guys. You guys are invested in what you're doing here and passionate about the Lobos and stay up on the Mountain West as a whole. So I appreciate you having me on. And we 6 nights from tonight, we'll have almost a full slate of games in the conference. So can't wait.
Before I cut you loose, I just want to let some of the listeners and viewers know that we'll plug some of Tom's podcasts, a direct link to his Spotify page. You can find it there. Has a lot of great guests on from around the league, from around the country. Tom, do you want to mention just some of the guests that you had on? I know you had Brown on from Utah State a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, that was a great one. That was the first player I ever had on. I had the opportunity to do it last year. I just never really I feel part of me feels bad like bugging them during the season, even though I know other people do. So I didn't do it. I probably will now this year that I did, because Darius Brown, I mentioned him a second ago, but he actually had reached out to me. This tells you the kind of young man he is. He's in the middle of signing with the Cavaliers G League team or whatever it's called these days. And he actually messaged me to say how much he appreciated like my pod and listened to it and liked it. So I said, hey, that's great. So we talked a little bit, and he was gracious enough to come on my pod. So I had him on. I then had a San Diego State podcaster, Trone Johnson, come on. 2 weeks ago, I did have Rocco Miller. Rocco's a great guest, does a lot of stuff in the college game scheduling and stuff like that, bracketology work. I'm going to record with a Matt Cox of the 3-Man Weave tomorrow, so that'll be out later this week. And then I'll just look and try and get some other local beat writers and stuff like that, and some coaches. Last year, I was fortunate enough to have Nico Medved, now the departed up to Washington, Danny Sprinkle on, had Commissioner Navarez on, and some other great guests. So I'm hopeful to repeat some of that over the next few months.
Yeah, and then a fun fact, and I'm going to kick it back over to you because I know I'm going to get it wrong, but Rocco Miller, who you released the podcast last week, he had some influence on, was it the St. John's or what game was it? The UCLA and UNM game or something?
It was the VCU game.
VCU
we were talking about scheduling and just about, and he reports on all of these on his Twitter account at Rocco Miller 8, like in the off season. It's not really happening now, but in those dark months of April, May, June, July, you get these random tweets for Rocco Miller, game between so-and-so and so-and-so. And, I never knew, I just assumed he's getting them from the SIDs of the schools. And we were going over some of the games, and he just mentioned that he actually had a hand in getting that game scheduled with VCU in New Mexico. So I was kind of caught off guard by that, but yeah, great follow on Twitter at Rocco Miller 8. He does a lot of stuff with the college games. So he writes previews. He has his own website that has all the non-conference schedules for all the Mountain West teams. So that's a pretty nice resource to go to if it's at bracketeer.org if you haven't done so already.
Yeah. Well, thanks again, Coach. Always appreciate having you on, and I'm sure we'll be bugging you a few times during the season just to do some check-in and Mountain West roundup. So you can follow him at Coach Moser. He's Tom Moser, and he's out of Delaware, East Coast. So it's a little bit late his time, but always appreciate you coming on, and always appreciate talking some in-depth, not only college hoops, but hoops in general. You know the game well. So thanks again, Coach. We'll be reaching out to you.
All right, guys, take care. Thanks for having me. Enjoy the rest of your night.
Enjoy the first slate of games. That was Coach Tom Moser. I love every time that we talk to him. It's fantastic. I think we got to figure out I don't want to use that one. Eric, what did you take away from him?
Tom's great. I mean, he mentioned it. We reached out to him over a year and a half ago, and he was more than willing to come on. I think when we just first started, we were still learning how to use some of the audio equipment, and he was someone that we kind of had been following on Twitter. He follows the Mountain West religiously, probably closer than a lot of us people in the Mountain West that follow a team closely. So highly knowledgeable within the game. He follows the players, he follows the coaches, kind of just news around the league. So it's always fun just getting him on because he has a real objective point of view with it too. Like us, we're all UNM grads, we're all rooting for the Lobos, but to hear with Tom, you kind of take his word with, and it carries some water, and he knows what he's talking about, so he's going to tell it to you and how it is. So it's nice having him on, and he's just overall good guy. He needs to get to Albuquerque to check out the pit, though. That's all I know.
He's got a place to stay here, and I'm never rooting for the Lobos. I'm rooting for whichever team can win me money. Joining us on that's what the Daily Lobo did to me, Eric. You know this. Joining us all the way from the Bay Area is a two-time offensive state lineman for San Juan Mendoza,
Richard.
Mr. Rick Thompson. Senor, how are you?
I'm doing good, guys, and enjoyed the conversation with Tom. We got to ask him more about his coaching resume someday.
Yeah, we've never done that.
Because he could definitely break it down for hours. But happy to be on. Was happy to hear and listen to the game last night, listen to your guys' takes on it. Sounds like the Lobos have some areas to improve, but a lot of bright spots as well.
I mean, you're a smart guy when it comes to the game of basketball. What did you think of last night?
Everybody's already hit on it, but starters played pretty heavy minutes. I think Dent was over 30. True was about 28. Nelly was over 20. So when the starters played, they stretched the lead out early. Seeing Dent hit that three was a good sign, I think, for us, hoping that he'll make some threes this year. True also 3 for 5 from 3-point range. And after the game, it was kind of interesting to me to hear the disappointment about his role last year. He straight up said, I didn't like my role last year. And, I don't know what his expectations were. He was probably the leader at his high school, obviously, the best player on whatever team he's been on probably since 5th grade. But, let's not forget he was coming in under 2 all conference guards, Mash and House and Dant were already in line. So Coach Patino talked a little bit about how he just had to wait his turn. And I really expect True to have a big season, like Eric was saying. It's going to be interesting to see how this new backcourt that we have of Dant and True work together. You could see their chemistry last night. It's going to be a lot different from House and Mash, right? A little more athletic now, a little bigger. But just a whole different era now for the backcourt. And Nelly looks strong. I believe he had double-digit rebounds. Amzil didn't make a 3, but he played hard, and he looked good to me, or sounded good to me on the radio. Double-digit rebounds as well. So like everyone's mentioning, for me, the question is, who's the secondary ball handler going to be when Dent comes out of the game? It sounds like it'll be CJ Nolan being that combo guard who will handle the ball but also shoot. And then Philly B, everyone's pushing for him to shoot more, but maybe that's just not the style of player he is, and it doesn't mean he's not going to be able to affect the game in other ways. He's a great passer. He pushes the ball. I think he can go coast to coast and rebound. But he does have to be able to shoot the 3 when he's open. So that'll be interesting to see if his confidence kind of rises. I think Sacco showed that he's going to be a capable defender, and I expect for him to get some minutes off the bench at post, also with the Tiki. So I think, it's fair to say the rotation, as we saw last year, is going to be 7 or 8 guys. So we think we know who it is right now, CJ and probably a Tiki off the bench, and then maybe a mix of Milicevic and Sacco at forward. And then it's really a mix-up for me at the other guards right now as far as who's going to get minutes to start the year. So those are my initial thoughts, but it looked very impressive. I think UTEP is much like a Mountain West team, very physical. Sounded like they were denying every pass, overplaying the passing lanes, fouling like crazy, treating it kind of like a pickup game. So it's good for the Lobos to experience that. And they did seem a little flustered, a lot of turnovers. So those are just a little things, but overall, good performance and a great test early.
I guess both Patino's son Tino and Pa Tino were at the World Series game tonight, which has been extended. The Dodgers lost, or the Yankees won 11-4. Game just ended about 5-10 minutes ago. I thought it was really there were three things. Usually press conferences are dull. When True Washington said he didn't like his role last year, if you cover the team, you're always looking for somebody to say something. And it's not catching them off guard. It's just looking when you're thinking about writing your story. I thought that was a different avenue if I was writing something last night. For him to say that, but he stuck it out. I mean, like you said, Rick, he's probably been the best player on his team since 5th grade. And then I don't know if you can hear that. It'd be great to hear him talk about it.
I mean, to his credit, he really did have a big role last year.
I know, that's what I thought.
He kind of did, down the stretch, kind of start to struggle in terms of shot selection and shot making, but his defense never faltered. 4 steals last night. This guy's probably one of the best, if not the best, all-around defender on the team, and I think his role was very important last year. But it just shows the confidence he has, and he expects himself. He has a nephew already in the NBA. So they're communicating. He's telling him what it takes to rise up, and it sounds by the way he's talking, he's ready.
Ronnie Chavez, I have to go to this because this was True. True looks huge this season. He looked bigger. He looked beefier. Will Weber of the Santa Fe New Mexican mentioned that he looked bigger. I'm sure, another year in college, I mean, you go to the NBA, you get ripped, and you go to, the NFL and you get bigger, maybe Major League Baseball. But I don't know, Rick or Eric, you guys played basketball, for him to be a little bit more stout and solid. What do you think of that?
It helps. Yeah, well, it helps his game. You talk about him coming in last year, trying to find a role within this team. He was the guy that was probably the most aggressive on defense outside of House, but House just didn't have the frame to be able to body up any other guards, where True does. True gets in your face. He's the guy that's going to be kind of a bulldog out there, get rebounds, be able to slash to the basket, and he has a knack for scoring. I just don't think he had the full opportunity to get there last year, but I think this is the year that he's kind of coming into his own. Obviously, he worked on his shot over the summer because we were talking about this kind of all summer. Who are the shooters going to be? And maybe True could be one of those guys that they rely on. So I think he brings a lot to this team, and with him just bulking up is just going to be good for his overall health, right? Kind of withstanding an entire season and the increased minutes and the increased role. But then on the defensive side, they're looking to him to kind of be the guy that, like, the tip of the point on the defensive side, and be the aggressor, be the guy that's going to get physical with other teams. Because let's be real, when you looked at this Lobo team last year, they didn't play very good defense, and it showed in that Clemson game. They were unable to stop bigger and stronger players. So, I mean, I don't think True's the only guy that bulked up on this team. Dent put on some weight too. So I think they took that to heart with trying to develop these guys and really evolve into a stronger, much more physical basketball team. And yeah, I'm really high on True Washington this year. I think I was high on him before the game started yesterday, but hearing he came out the gate, guns blaring, it was a really nice thing to hear. I wasn't able to attend, but those in the stands, and you yourself included, Ryan, I don't think anyone was really expecting them to come out like that. But I think they're going to have to lean on True to be a contributor, and maybe he's one of those guys that becomes one of those high volume scorers, because I know he's not afraid to shoot the ball.
I was excited to see. We didn't even talk about it. I was excited to see one thing, and I'm not trying to put, if Ed Nunez is watching, I'm not put words in his mouth. because he would break it down again. He knows the game just as much as you guys do. He thought Philip Borvichinen looked kind of slow. I'd like to hear his thoughts on that. And I thought that was interesting. Again, Ed, if you're listening, that was just something we were talking about sitting at the game. I'm not trying to, I'm not putting him on the spot. I wanted to hear him break it down. Patino also, go ahead, Eric. I was trying to think of what I was formulate my sentence, but go ahead.
Just on the Borvichinen thing, I'm going to bring up some highlights here because I think it's just a part of his game. He's 6'9", right? And I don't think I pulled up the wrong highlight there. Give me a sec. I pulled up Amzil's.
And I'm going to get everybody to pronounce it right. Borovichinen. Where did he go? That's all right. I couldn't say.
He has like a more European style, like look at Luka. Luka is one of the slowest people, and I'm not comparing him to Luka, but I'm saying the footwork. Look, that reminds you of footwork that we see in the NBA all the time in terms of the steps. So I think it's just finding his spots. It's his first time playing in the pit in front of that crowd. He didn't play a lot of minutes at Arizona, if any, most of his 2 years there. So I think it's just going to be a feeling out process and understanding his role. I think he has a lot of skill, and it's going to show at some point.
Well, that skill translates too, because you look at him being able to get or draw a lot of mismatches, getting someone smaller on him, but him kind of having like a guard mentality that can get in the lane, can withstand a more physical player, but be a really good passer down low, because he can find Nelly down low. He can find some other people down low. He can even play a little bit in that high or that low pick and roll. And I mean, some of these offenses around the country, you have these mismatches where you have guys with length that get into the paint that find other guys down low for little short dump offs. Like that's something that the Lobos have never really had. They haven't had a unique player like this. And even though he's considered a guard, he's not going to be this super flashy, fast guard like a Jalen House was, but he's smart and he's skilled and he understands the game and he understands where players need to be on the court. And he just understands it from that European style of play. So I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there, Rick.
But I think Ryan brought up a good point as far as the defense or you, Eric, is, can he play defense? We don't really know that yet, right? If you guys are saying his foot speed looks semi-slow, it'll be interesting because, when you match up against a Utah State, they have 3 guys that can fly down the court with Falsalev, Martinez, Allen, and Allen's going to be throwing those outlet passes. Are they going to be able to get back? So that's a question that we don't really know. What I'm reading here is that his defense is solid. I think we can see in those videos his rebounding is going to be good and should be able to take advantage of that size when there's a smaller guy on his back. So lots of room for growth and excited to see him play more.
Yeah, I have a question for Ryan because Ryan was at the game yesterday. I looked at the stat sheet following the game and didn't really hear his name get called too much, but a guy that we talked about a lot was CJ Noland. What was kind of your impression, him on the floor, him being able to kind of handle some of the point guard responsibilities, maybe when Donovan Dent is out, him being kind of like that second guard, or maybe it turns into like a Cade Dotson. But what was your initial take or your first impression with seeing CJ Noland out there?
Well, you got to look at the stat sheet because I was excited to see him play last night. Jacob's really high on him. Neff's really high on him from North Texas. 0 for 4 from the field, 0 for 3 from 3. So he didn't hit anything. Again, you take everything with a grain of salt. I don't know. I think he adds an element. I'm repeating Neff. He's really high on him. He seems kind of like a wing guy. Again, I could be talking out my butt. You guys are the basketball players. Again, it probably might take him get some time to get acclimated with the team. I didn't expect him to come in and be a world beater, but we went straight into Tom. And this game to me was really, really unique yesterday because they've changed that rule, which I don't know much about. So, again, what I can cover and what I learned as a quote unquote journalist. I mean, really, I'm a talking head now on this show. is UTEP played them really tough last night, and they went on multiple runs. So I don't know if it was like first game. I don't want to say first game jitters, but maybe first game jitters in a new system. I was excited for all these new guys. He mentioned, I think Patino mentioned, and I forgot if it was Milicevic or Nolan, that he's a shooter and he's got to shoot. Go ahead, Rick.
I think Tom made a good point about CJ Nolan, is that he was playing with most of the bench players where he'll be playing with the starters in a normal game, right? And that means a lot, especially when you're playing against a team like UTEP that was just going all out on defense. So he's 35% from three for his career, or 35 for the career, 38% last year for North Texas. So can definitely knock it down. When we talked to Det at Media Days, he said he's going to fit next to him well. Obviously, you don't get named captain, right, if you're not looking good in practice and showing that you're able to, have an impact on other players. So I think that was just one game, new setting, playing with guys he won't be normally playing with. So I expect him to be the key man, and he might even get more minutes than Philly B in a game. He might be the closer at the end of the game. I wouldn't be surprised over Philly. But it all depends on how these guys come in and which transfers really hit, as I always say.
All right. I'm trying to not interject as many comments into our show unless they're good, but this one, it's at you, Eric. These highlights are all with 3 minutes left. Arizona was up by 100. LOL. I mean, that's true, but what else?
That's when he came in, unfortunately.
That's when he came in. Chris Paul hits a big three down to cut the lead to 42. He's extending the lead to 42. What do you want us to do?
You can still get his play style though, and his overall fundamental and skill set. I think just by looking at that, I think he was getting knocked for being slow or flat-footed, but it's just, how faster do you expect a guy that's 6'9" that does that? So that's just kind of where I'm at with it.
No, they counted the fouls. UNM at 13 and UTEP had 27. Yes. David, love you. Damn it. I lost my train of thought there. As far as I'm going off topic here, but Luka, I'm still baffled that Dallas won the West last year, and watching Luka, I'm not trying to be hot take guy. I'm just like, how did he make that shot? Like he's like smooth as butter, and then he looks like Eric Cartman on defense. Like I can't figure it out. I meant, do they count as being fouled out? Yeah, they did. Somebody fouled out yesterday, I believe. I think I was schmoozing in the second half, so forgive me. And then I was also trying to watch the Giants Steelers game. Cause if you can't tell, I bet on the Steelers. I know, I don't know if either of you have any other comments, but the season starts against Nichols on Monday night. Next Friday night is a big, not this Friday night, next Friday night. In fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada, they're playing UCLA and Henderson. Do you guys have any other final thoughts? And then I just kind of wanted to get, and I'll give mine, just what you think is going to happen this season. Do you have any final thoughts on listening to the game last night and looking at the box score? Because way to promote. And there were 10,000 people there last night. I thought that was impressive.
Yeah, I think with an exhibition, you can kind of throw out the box score a little bit. The overall turnover stat was the one that jumped out to me, which was in the mid to high 20s, something you don't want to see, but a lot of minutes were played, and it was spread out just about everybody. I think 2 players didn't play that were suited out. Araji and Daniel Thomas didn't play. Didn't know what the full story was there, but I know Patino did address it in the post-game pressers. It's just Daniel Thomas is coming in at the 4 spot, and they have literally 4 guys that play the 4 position. So he's a true freshman. So I guess they didn't really expect anything more or less than that. But I did take a few good things away, obviously, like True Washington Really high on him. I think that he's going to develop into a really, really solid basketball player. And he's only a sophomore, which is crazy. And we talked about it, him making that freshman to sophomore year leap. The same thing that happened with Donovan Dent. So now they're playing side by side, and it's the new era of guards in UNM basketball, and I'm freaking stoked for it. Really excited about the schedule this year. Obviously, the big ones: St. John's, UCLA. Ryan, you're going to be going to both of them, which I'm really jealous about. But VCU,
No, you're not jealous of Central New Jersey, trust me.
VCU coming to the pit too. I think that's another big one. And then you really can't skip a beat with all the Mountain West in play. I think we just covered an hour and a half with it with Tom Moser. So I think this league's going to be very strong again. I think the Lobos are going to be strong. I think there's a few question marks that we're going to see kind of unfold a little bit with who's going to be the scorers, who's going to be the shooters, who's going to get playing time. I don't think anything's really set in stone yet, minus like maybe a Donovan Dent starting, True Washington, Nelly Jr. Joseph, but the other two spots on the floor might kind of be shaken up over the first few weeks while things kind of fill out a little bit. But I'm excited. This is our pro team. I'm been a through and through fan for UNM basketball for as long as I can remember, and I'm glad we're doing what we're doing, and it's kind of taken off. We've been here for a year and a half, coming on 2 years now. So looking forward to covering UNM basketball with you guys, and hopefully we get more people to kind of join in on the conversation and call into our open line every so often when we do open it up. So
yeah, I'm not doing that tonight. I'm not up for I'm not up for it. I do want to mention that Richard Pitino probably gives zero shits about who I am. He did remember I was a Giants fan. I do love when he spats with Jeff Grammer, but I like his sense of humor, and I know he hates doing press conferences, but I guess on a somewhat personal, professional level, he's kind of funny. I mean, he made a joke. Who had 17 rebounds last night? Or somebody, I thought somebody had 17 rebounds. Where is it? 16. Nelly. I mean, did anybody talk about Nelly Jr. Joseph? I might have zoned out, but he had a great game last night. He kind of hit a fadeaway. It looked good early in the game there. But he had 16 rebounds. Like Patino made a comment about him not being Dennis Rodman. Then he made a comment about how nobody wants to pay taxes. And then Joe Golding busted into the media room. I'm glad I choose busted there. Into the media room. It was funny. It was a comical moment. Scared the shit out of Richard Pitino. I love covering. I've really liked talking to Richard Pitino. Basketball has been a little bit better in my tenure of covering UNM athletics. Steve Alford has been cool as hell. I know to many, Lobo fan on here that don't like that. The basketball coaches, Leon Rice, Nico Medved, Craig Neal was cool to me. As opposed to the football coaches, Dan, I love Danny, but I'm just throwing out there Rick, and then I'll give my thoughts final on the season. But Rick, I wanted, you know what? You're more of the basketball guy. I'll go first. I don't know about UCLA. I guess they're a teetering or borderline top 25 team. Mick Cronin's got his work cut out for him. Jacob and I used to joke last year, like every game he looked like he thought he was going to get fired and his head was going to explode. I don't think they're going to beat St. John's. I think going 2 time zones over, I can't see it. Pitino said that. Richard Pitino mentioned to us in Vegas that, Lobo fans might not be that happy after non-conference, or, there's going to be a couple of losses here. I mean, that's what happens when you book this schedule. I'll pull out the old Dallas Cowboy over the last 15 years. You'd probably rather lose the Giants in September than the Packers in January. I would love for them to play very competitive games here. And if they don't win, they don't win. I would gladly, putting my UNM hat on here, gladly have them lose to St. John's and UCLA and advance to the Sweet 16 or the Elite 8 in March. Maybe those games build them up, teach them lessons for that. I am excited for this schedule. I am excited for this team. I think this team might be better than Boise State, and Lee Faria is responsible for that. He's kind of changed my mind. I think they're very capable of not only winning the Mountain West regular season, but probably the tournament. I know it's very hard to do. You saw it last year. You get a team that gets hot. I think in my book, the expectations are very high. I'm not expecting, again, a win against UCLA or St. John's. I expect them to dominate the Pit again this year. No loss to Air Force. That might have been a lesson learned. I would be quite shocked if they lost at home this year. That's where I'm feeling about this team. I like a lot of things I saw last night. I think UTEP's better. Bracketology means rat shit right now. Lenardi, as of the 22nd of this month, has them as the first 4 out. So at least they're getting a little bit of love on that end. Get that automatic bid. You never know what happens. I think this is a beyond 20 win team this year. I would not be shocked if they won the regular season championship. That's, and I'm sure for those of the usual suspects that listen, you're like, what the hell? Wow. Ryan's probably saying something good. That's how I feel. Rick, I wanted your thoughts after my incoherent rambling there.
Before I go into just the overall what I'm thinking for this season, I think you're right about Nelly. Obviously named to the preseason all-conference team, but I think he's going to be bounds greater this year. His role is going to be increased. He'll get more touches down low. I think he has parts of his game that he hasn't shown us yet. He can knock down the mid-range shot. He can spin on the baseline. And even for a guy that was super strong, he looks even stronger. He is, capable of those huge rebound games, and I think he's the defensive anchor down low, obviously. But for the season, I know the expectations are very high. For me, I'm kind of trying to temper them because I see the other talent around the league. We got to hear a bunch of guys speak about it. I've listened to a lot of other shows. And I'm really worried about the Utah State team being better than what a lot of people think. When I watch them play that scrimmage, I don't think we, being UNM or the Lobos, match up good against them, just because of their length. Colorado State, like Tom mentioned, I think will be kind of down this year with their loss. And San Diego State, they have a bunch of unknowns at a lot of places. But what we do know is they have a lot of talent and they have the best coach. So I think it's going to come down to probably San Diego State or Utah State for me. I don't really like Boise State as much as most people. I don't think they have the depth. Once they lose Cardenas, or if Cardenas goes out, he is a capable shooter. But who else makes threes besides Dagenhart and him? I don't see it. UNLV, DJ Thomas is already in a walking boot to start the season, and for me, he was one of my favorite players and expected a big season for him. So UNLV will be kind of on pause until he comes back, in my eyes. So there's a lot of other teams. I don't know if UNM wins the conference or the tournament this year. With this schedule they have, I think they can get in that large bid, though. If they don't, they just have to be able to capitalize on these games, and fans just have to be ready for something that we haven't had, is a tough non-con here, and not going, what were we, 13-0 last year or more than that? I can't remember, but I'm kind of tempering it.
St. Mary's last year, and then the year before they were.
What were they the year before that?
They were 14-0.
Right. So it's definitely not going to be that. I think playing UTEP was great. That was a much better opponent than Nichols is going to be. That was as close to a real game. So that was really good. And all these games early are going to really matter down the road. And it really depends on what injuries, come across. Mashburn and House both missed time last year, and that kind of caused some shakeup in the lineup, obviously. So lots of unknowns still. But I think they'll be top 3. I just don't think they'll win it because of not as much depth as we thought going into it for me.
Eric, I wanted to ask you this as much as the brand, maybe before we log off here. I feel with what the Pit is, and I saw something online a couple months ago that said that, UNM's probably a top 40 basketball program. I mean, that's a pretty big accolade. The arena is well known. It does get loud. As far as brand, I think for UNM to play UCLA, and obviously, I'm sure it's the relationship between father and son that really helps. So they're like, yeah, we'll schedule a game against each other. But where he's at and what St. John's basketball means to that city, Eric, I just wanted your thoughts on like the brand and when you finally saw the schedule. I mean, how cool did you think it was?
Well, you kind of get the matchups with other historically good programs, right? Like UCLA is a blue blood. St. John's is one of those teams that was kind of at the creation of the Big East, and one of those teams that you just kind of hear stories about. And it's cool that they get to play these teams in the same season, literally weeks apart. And then you have a school like VCU coming to the Pit. I know for the longest time ever, it's not an unknown, but it's been really hard to schedule get teams to come play UNM at the Pit. No one wants to come play here. Look at Arizona, who's literally a bus ride over. So as far as the brand goes, I think this program in a whole and UNM and the Lobo brand is the trajectory. It's been going up over the last few seasons. Obviously, the Patino name has helped kind of carry that, but the overall success, the fan support is second to none. It's one of the what were they ranked number 10 in Andy Katz arenas in the country. They came in at number 10, so they were in the top 10 there.
I think he's got some bias because he was at the Journal.
That's true, but he's also been in a lot of other arenas and
Yeah.
kind of experienced them firsthand. So it's cool. It's got an esque to it that not a lot of arenas do have. There has been a history of winning here. The fan support, not really having an NBA team to compete with. It's part of the tradition, and it's the state of New Mexico values UNM as a whole, but I think they value UNM basketball as it being the staple program in athletics that people kind of hold hard to their chest and are really prideful in. So I don't think you can go a lot of places around the country that have that type of tie with the community, with the support system. You just don't have it. So I think with how close knit that is and how the support and everything is kind of unfolding with NIL and government funds and conference realignment, I wouldn't be shocked to see the state of New Mexico with like the surplus of oil money that they have. And I'm including New Mexico State in this statement, but I wouldn't be surprised if the state starts injecting a little bit more money than the universities have seen in the past to kind of really uplift athletics and get these programs in these schools on a higher podium, because it's what people resonate with in the state. It's what we hold prideful to our chest. So I think that the brands are only getting better, and I think the support from a governmental standpoint and then the overall fan support and love is as strong as ever. And I mean that in my personal opinion, but I truly believe that these both are kind of going in the right direction.
Rick, do you have any final thoughts?
Now, just looking forward to basketball kicking off and for a football game this weekend. But no, well said, Eric. And I think you're right. I think top 25 in attendance. Fantastic coach, recruiting great players, have got good transfers. Really have a great opportunity to build something. I think until the conference kind of gets weakened, in my opinion, in 2 years. So I think they need to make the most of these 2 years. Patino's already mentioned recruiting has been kind of affected by the conference realignment news. So we just kind of have to hope that we still get the same kind of caliber of players moving forward. But other than that, man, I'm just ready to go, ready for these games to start.
I am I am ready for college basketball season. We'll have Jacob Neff on eventually. I mean, he absolutely loves it. I am SI has UNM at 70. Is that too low? That's probably just about right. I mean, giving this program a little bit more, giving this team a little bit more probably where where they might need to be, or where the just right, if I can talk. When you're at 70, there's 68 teams that get in the tournament. Essentially, you're in the thick of shit right there. So I think that's all right. I mean, again, you lose
Well,
the
it's kind of
UCLA.
spot on. I mean,
Yeah, it's spot on. You
right being on the bubble.
If they split or beat UCLA and St. John's, then it's a different conversation. You don't beat them, which I think we're gonna find out real fast. And it's
Well,
fine.
You make a good point there, Ryan, because UNM can't rely on just winning in the Mountain West. We saw what that did last year. They were undefeated. They didn't really have a signature win until really conference play hit. And everyone thought they were going to be safe. And then come to find out that
Well, they were 6th. Let's not forget they finished 6th in conference. So they didn't even play that well in conference either.
Right. But they were counting on those Q1 wins within conference to kind of carry their weight for them. But I think that's kind of what springboarded Patino. Is like, we need to schedule the big boys out of conference to not only bring some excitement to the schedule and schedule these big games, but at the same time, we have to kind of give ourselves some opportunities outside of conference to put our names on the board and hopefully build that resume come March.
And the cool thing, real quick, Ryan, that he
Right.
told you and I is he said the fans deserve this. After seeing what they've given his program the last few years, he said it was really, in part, he wanted to do this for the fans and give them the opportunity to play these big boy schools. So I just thought that was really cool to hear, and I didn't think coaches really took the fans' thoughts and love into account when they're scheduling, but he did.
I always think of that, like when they are like, I love my fans. I love the fans. Our program has great fans. Or just like a singer, like, I love my fans. And then they just walk behind a closed door and call them a bunch of dumbasses. I think Ariana Grande got caught in a hot mic saying that years ago, but it just feels like something out of South Park or The Simpsons. But as far as, and I know we're continuing to talk here, I'm trying to wrap up, but as far as 70 going and making a case for March, you have 3 games. VCU is a fringe team. People like them a lot out of the A10. It's them and Dayton to make the tournament. If you are able to win, I think 2 of these 3 games, if you figure out how to beat UCLA St. John's, I think they're probably going to get VCU at home. You have to be in the thick of things. If they have even if they have a decent Mountain West Conference team, the committee will look at the fact that they beat UCLA in a neutral court or that they beat St. John's in the Garden. And also, hypothetically, if you win all of those games, you are going to be in the bracket in bracketology, whether it's Jerry Palmer or the guy from Fox or Fartnardi. They're going to be, in the thick of it. They will be considered for the tournament. The committee will not frown on that. If you're winning those games, I don't know. The committee might look at them very nicely for playing those teams. Show tomorrow night. Ben Whitesong, Nick Coppola will be joining us. We're going to be talking football tomorrow night. VCU is 60 in SI ranking. Boise's 44. Yeah, a lot of people are high on Boise. Rick's not. Remember that. Everybody remember that.
I think the reason I'm not is because I couldn't get Degenhardt or Stanley to crack a smile. I came at him with some of my best material, old man jokes too, and they just looked at me as if they could care less. But they were nice. They were nice guys. They just didn't like my material.
I mean, I tried.
So they get rated down in my preseason rankings if you don't laugh at me.
Well, I made a comment about Nick Clifford having an amazing NBA body, and he looked at me like, what is wrong with you? I don't know, Josh, go ahead, Rick.
Mountain West scrimmage update at the half. It was San Jose State 38 over Cal State East Bay, who had 30 at half. So game should probably be wrapping up, but they're winning.
Here you go, Rick. They definitely won't smile at you when Lobos sweep them this season. We're taking note of that. Hold on. What time is it? October 29th. Ronnie Chavez, BSU. Okay, that's taking note.
I'll sign it.
There you go. I'm free if you follow at Old Takes Exposed on Twitter and Instagram. They always just write they just have this signature emoji, you like taking note. Yeah, that I voted Wyoming up more because Cole Henry and Kobe Newton were a lot cooler to talk to. You know who was cool? Was it you or Neff that sat with me, Rick? It was Nick Davidson and Trey Coleman. Like I said something stupid, and Nick Davidson was pretty much laughing. He seemed to appreciate us, so that was good.
Yeah,
I don't know.
That was interesting that Nick Davidson played against Donovan Dett in AAU ball, etc., or in just maybe the regular high school team. So a lot of these guys have relationships dating back, before they were even in the Mountain West. Another interesting one I saw was Mr. Lake on Colorado. I'm forgetting his first name, but he was teammates with CJ Noland in AAU or growing up in Texas. So there's all these special relationships among players, and getting to play against some of your old foes at this level must be really fun for them.
No, that's a valid point. Eric, do you have anything to say?
No, but I do have the interview at Mountain West Media Days that you guys sat down with Donovan Dent and Nelly lined up, so I can play that now, just so for everyone that wasn't able to watch it live when we were out there a couple weeks ago, or hasn't been able to see it on our YouTube channel. I'm happy to show it here just so you guys can catch it. Wondering if someone online can just let us know if you can hear it, but I'm gonna start playing it now.
There's Phil Perry. He's very helpful. Cannot hear it.
Can't hear it?
No. You want me to try?
Sure.
Fantastic live show. Okay, what is that on YouTube?
Yeah, it's like at the 5-minute mark.
We can just hold off.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Anyway, tomorrow, Ben Wysong, Nick Coppola, NMSU did not cover for me tonight at +9.5, and I forgot that they were going 2 time zones east, so they got killed 34-13. They had 12 passing yards early in the fourth quarter. Nick will break that down. Ben will talk about it. I don't know again what Ben can and can't tell us about Luke Wysong.
If he tells us anything, Bronco is going to show up at his house the next day and be pretty upset. So he better not tell us anything.
And give him a stern talking.
Yeah, a stern shaking.
Ben White tomorrow night. I can just see Bronco actually physically showing up, and
that would be a fierce matchup. Both of those guys are monsters. So.
Yes, they are. Again, Nichols, men's basketball. Nichols is at home at the Pit. Let me rephrase that. Nichols, artist formerly known as Nicholls State, is the UNM men's basketball season opener. Monday night, 7:00. I believe it's on the Mountain West Network, and then you can also listen to Rob and Hunter Green on the call. Saturday at 2 on True TV with Victor Cruz, Champ Bailey, I think, and Takeo Spikes. They play 1-7 Wyoming. I probably would take it that UNM will get their 4th win of the season. We keep mentioning it. The Montana State game, as I butcher the English language, is slowly creeping up on them, biting them in the butt, where they could have 5 wins. They need to find 3 wins, in 4 games left. Still, I think, been an exciting season to talk about. Some very positive things. Donovan Dent, the resurgence, the comeback of the year with Luke Wysong and some of the wide receivers on Saturday that kind of got overlooked. Not boring. I mean, not compared to 2022. And as much as we love Danny Gonzalez, that offense was I'm going to steal a word from Rick Thompson here, putrid to watch. They couldn't even get a first down. So we'll be back tomorrow night. Nick Coppola, Ben Wysong. Want to throw this out there. We will be live Monday from prior to the Nicholls State game, trying to figure out what we can do. I don't know if I'll be live at the Pit or not. I will be in Las Vegas, Nevada the following Friday for UCLA. San Diego State UNM plays at San Diego State that night. And then they play UCLA. I believe tip is at 9 Mountain Time, 8 Pacific. And then the following weekend, Washington State is in town football, and then UNM plays St. John's in Madison Square Garden. So I've got a busy 2.5, 3 weeks. Looking forward to it. I want to thank Tom Moser. As always, he's fantastic. You can catch him on Top of the Mountain West podcast at Coach Moser. Rick, thanks for joining us. I was glad that you were able to fit in. And what? No, I don't think that's true. Anyway, I'm not going to end on that note. No, I think that that win would have counted because it counts for. I don't know. I got to get an answer to that. I'm not going to talk out of my ass. Eric Moulton, my business partner in crime. Hey, Eric, I'm glad you were on tonight. It's been a while.
It has been a while, but happy to join you guys and looking forward to this upcoming season. Let's get rolling.
And Rick's going to have a stern talking to later.
I definitely deserve one, guys, but thanks for letting me join. Got way too much basketball on the mind here, so ready to go.
Everybody have a good rest of your night. We'll talk to you tomorrow. I'm Ryan Tamori. This is the Pit Press Live.